Elizabethton, it's clear and 68. In Irwin, it's clear and 70. In Johnson City, it's partly cloudy and 66.
Your weekday morning just got better. Outkick the coverage with Clay Travis. 6:30 until 9, only on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio.
Well, I tell you, Clay Travis, you got the best morning show in the market with Outkick the coverage and Clay Travis. You really do. Right here on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio. I'd like to think we have the best local sports talk right here on this show. Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now. We do. Come on. I mean, evaluate this show against what they do with the best guests and the hardest hitting opinions and go from there. Okay? Do you want to hear, people call up and talk about the New York Yankees, or do you want to hear things of a more, interesting nature? It's spring football season, right? ATSU has their spring game this weekend, too, by the way. So we'll look at that. Hey, going back to the teams that could go undefeated, according to Brad Crawford, 24/7. Just finishing up, and we began talking. He said, look, these guys are kind of long shots, but he said, okay, Michigan, Notre Dame, Texas, and then he also mentioned, and I mentioned Ohio State. Now, another one that he mentions, does Crawford, UCF, and I'm like, yeah, I definitely see that. And that is kind of, you know what? Are you, that's not exactly respectful to the American, is it? Toughest games that UCF has, Stanford, but they come to Florida. UCF has to go to the University of Pittsburgh. They won their division, but they won it with a 7-7 record last year. All right, so they have a nice freshman running back, I know, at Pitt. Quarterback returns, he threw for 8 yards in the ACC title game. Okay, so you look at that. Kenny Pickett is his name, if you want to know. He was the quarterback that beat Miami, though, a couple of years ago when Miami was undefeated. Cincinnati, at Cincinnati, that's the toughest game they say UCF is in the American. So, yeah, maybe UCF goes undefeated and finishes 4th in the country again. Do they make the college football playoff even? That sort of thing. Oklahoma, get the idea that Oklahoma is chosen because, look, they churn out great quarterbacks at Oklahoma these days under Lincoln Riley with the precision of Apple computers. Thank you, Howie Schwab, many years ago for that line. Their tough games, Texas at home, Iowa State at home. Do I have to go on with this anymore? I mean, when Iowa State at home. Oh, they have to go to Oklahoma State. When did Oklahoma State ever beat Oklahoma? I know it's happened, but I mean, when has it happened? I can't remember one time really where I said, then there was that great Oklahoma State-Oklahoma game that the Cowboys won. I honestly cannot remember one time. I've watched them play before. I remember when Mike Gundy, now their coach, remember when Tennessee wanted him to be their coach, was the quarterback there. Thurman Thomas was in a backfield for the Cowboys. They still couldn't beat the Sooners. I'm trying to remember. Jimmy Johnson was the coach. I still don't remember them beating. I know it's happened, but I don't remember it ever happening. Other team that could go undefeated this college football season, no surprise here, Jaw, as they say in Jaw. Bulldogs got to play Notre Dame, rematch of the 1980 Sugar Bowl. They have the cocktail party. Got to go to Auburn. They host Texas A&M. Other than that, what? Missouri comes to Athens. Don't discount that. Like I said, I do think Missouri is good. And it's in the listing that Brad Crawford writes as one of the games they ought to win. And I would agree with that. But I actually might put that as toughest games ahead of A&M, ahead of Texas A&M. I think I might do that for Missouri. I'd flip-flop that. But this was new. Clemson could go undefeated. So, anyway, those are the teams. Let me just recap them. That basically Brad Crawford, 24/7, thinks could go undefeated. spring practice going on right now for so many teams. So let's discuss this. Michigan, in kind of a long shot mode, Notre Dame, Texas, Central Florida, Ohio State, which I could see that, Oklahoma Sooners, Georgia, Alabama, and then Clemson. If you're wondering if Clemson has to play, they host Texas A&M. They go to Syracuse Textile Bowl against NC State, which is obviously not in South Carolina. And obviously neither is NC State. But you're talking about your third toughest game. I mean, think that Florida State isn't going to be one of the tough games for Clemson. They actually, host Florida State. They do have to go to South Carolina, but, what's South Carolina these days, but sort of, a team that has beaten Tennessee 3 straight years. They also lost the Belk Bowl 28-0 to Virginia. What's Virginia? You go with competing for the conference title last year, at least the. Let's see here. So you got some other stories coming out. Johnny Manziel wants to now be called John Manziel. Wants to be thought of as more mature. I'm Marky Billson. I don't see what the big deal is. And frankly, I think that if he wants to be shown that he's more mature, then maybe, just maybe, he ought to not be going to Los Angeles nightclubs and be spotted there while he's the quarterback of the Memphis Express, and they don't have a game in Los Johnny Manziel. Oh, yes, the Browns are playing tomorrow. I'll be seen on Saturday night in the morning to Cleveland. Come on here. So we're looking at that. By the way, how many people around here still call John Majors Johnny Majors? He's in his 80s. So Johnny Manziel wants to be called John Manziel. No, I'm just still not going to. Probably will never hear from him again. I do want to get to this. I'm mentioning these college football news, and we began talking about Phil Fulmer and how the honeymoon period may be just about at an end. He actually made a financial hire with Kelly Harper. He also has, his coach has got to start winning next year for the Vols. I guess it's this year, but next season. Jeremy Pruitt's got to start winning. I don't say the Vols have to go 11-1. They're not going to do that. 7-5, yes. Will that be enough to appease the people around here? Is 7-5 about where Tennessee ranks in modern college football, considering their performances with a few highlights, but also plenty of lowlights over the last decade or so? It is, but Georgia, South Carolina, Florida certainly, Alabama produced more players. Anyway, something happened, though, in this last spring practice go-around. And you know what it is? The assistant coaches were talking to the media. Now, that's one of the things that I think is very painfully old school, and I think there's no place for it, is the suppression of information from the Pruitt regime. I'm going to be the only guy who talks to the media. My assistants are off limits. Jim Chaney's been around and all this, and there's actually some, he actually stopped. Yeah. That's a bit overbearing, and also it also allows you to get stories like Vols have good day in church coming out of the Tennessee camp instead of who's really going to be playing on the offensive line, or if people are actually hurt, or what really did happen with Quarte Sapp on the sidelines last year. Yeah, all that stuff. That gets swept under the rug so that, presumably we in the media and sing Rocky Top. I mentioned this last year. I was watching the ETSU Tennessee game, and there was a sideline reporter